First, what next for the stimulus package in Congress? It faces a much more difficult test in the U.S. Senate, where the outlook is less certain. Democrats will need the support of at least some Republicans to win passage, and they've made some changes to try to appeal to moderates. But many GOP senators still remain unconvinced. One of those Republicans is Tennessee's Bob Corker, a member of the Banking Committee. I spoke to him before the House vote and asked whether he expects the stimulus to get any Republican support in the Senate.
I don't think so at this point. I think that people are beginning to realize, I think on both sides of the aisle actually, that this is not a stimulus bill. It's a giant spending bill, and hopefully the White House will actually give some adult supervision. I mean, this has gotten totally out of hand. I talked with the governor of our state today, who's on the other side of the aisle, and a friend, and I told him that in jest he ought to be praying for another economic recession. The money that is pouring into states from this bill is absolutely incredible. And this is totally out of whack. It is not a stimulus bill, and I think people are beginning to see that. So hopefully, as you know, the president came over yesterday. Hopefully, there'll be some degree of adult supervision on this so that we don't just allow what passed the House to become law, because it is just a potpourri of lots of spending that's not directed in any way. And I think you've heard other people talk about the fact that the 90% issue in this country today is housing and the credit markets. And the fact is that if we lay a huge spending bill on top of not fixing that, a foundation that will not work for this country, all we're doing is wasting huge sums of money, knowing that, by the way, down the road there's still going to be hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars lost in the credit market. So to me, this is not being done in the appropriate way. The whole picture needs to be talked about and dealt with at one time, and certainly the wasteful spending that's taking place here, to me, is just incredible. And I think people on both sides of the aisle around this country are beginning to realize that.
Senator, what about, if I'm hearing you correctly, you think that this administration should handle the TARP money, even perhaps an additional TARP request to stabilize the financial system before they even consider a stimulus? That should be the first order of business?
I truly believe that the credit market should be dealt with first. The fact is that small business people, others that want to do intelligent things in their own community, that, by the way, are creating private sector jobs, cannot do that today. I know the administration is coming back for more TARP money. That's not an if. I know that is going to occur. And the fact is that then it's $350 billion now. It's going to be a lot more money into the future. So we're talking about...
Do you have your own guess, sir, as to what that figure should be or will be?
Look, if I was just going to throw out a number, my guess is we could be looking at upwards, before this is all said and done, of another $1 trillion. Just on the credit markets themselves and dealing with housing. So it's a lot of money. We're talking really $2 trillion if you look at what is going to pass the House tonight, and as we speak, this is going to come on after. It's a lot of money, and I think people are realizing we're starting to be at a point where there's no real juice left to deal with the things that this country needs to deal with, and the amount of debt that we're piling up for frivolous spending. I mean, if you look at what's in this bill, it's pretty incredible. It's an embarrassment. And again, I do think the Obama administration is trying to be responsible. Hopefully, again, they will step in. Obviously, Republicans are not involved in spending this money. I don't say that to be partisan. That's just the way this process is working. And hopefully the administration will step in, show some adult supervision, and make sure that we don't do what's getting ready to look like it might happen if the House bill becomes law.
Senator, let me ask you about some of those provisions, because you've heard the Democrats say, listen, we're investing in the future here with the new smart grid for electricity movement around the country, new highways,
right.
A new fleet of vehicles, energy-efficient vehicles. That's spending that will help the country over the long term and also help the economy in the short term.
Well, look, I actually like many of those things, and let's do that under budget caps, and let's do that in an appropriate way. But we're talking, and that's called a spending bill, by the way. We appropriate dollars for spending bills. That is not a stimulus. If you look at where this money is going and how long it's going to take to actually get out into the public domain, and then if you look at the fact that it's being done with huge deficit spending, we are not taking our country forward. We are taking our country backwards. You look at the amount of aid that's going to states. In many cases, the states are maybe the last place in the country where we're actually doing things that are fiscally prudent. And yet what we're doing is borrowing a huge amount of money, flushing it down to the states, in many cases in overwhelming amounts. And again, that is not a stimulus. That is not creating jobs. So hopefully, again, this administration will step in, since it's being driven solely by the Democratic side, not to be partisan, just observing what's happening. They'll step in and hopefully slow this train down. And then let's address the right things: housing. Let's address the credit markets. Let's make sure that Americans are able to keep more of their own money in their pockets and make prudent decisions with that.
Senator, right now they're going to need, again, we don't need a 60-vote margin in the Senate because we don't have all those seats filled right now because of the Minnesota situation. Do you see, again, any Republicans breaking with and joining the president in support of this legislation? Because if not, it sounds like we might have a stalemate.
Well, look, I don't think I'm at the point of being able to predict. I know that many of what you might call the more moderate senators on the Republican side are truly very, very concerned about what's happening in this package. And I think all of us, I think the characterizations today by the press conference with Mr. Gibbs are correct. I think all of us truly want to work with this administration to cause the right things to happen. We're all concerned about our states. We think the president has a unique opportunity to actually be a great president during this time of great need in our country. But we know, I know with every cell in my body that this bill, the way it's being produced and what's the outcome is really hugely wasteful, and people for generations are going to be paying for this huge mistake, which again is not stimulus but spending. I think there are many people like me that want to see this changed and want to see us address this economy in a real way.
Senator, one final question. I know you have to run. Is there one specific change that the president could to convince his Democratic colleagues to make this legislation that would make it a little bit more palatable for you?
Well, I think, one change would be to, instead of just flushing the country with wasteful spending, to instead focus the bulk of that on housing and the financial crisis, which they, again, are going to have to deal with. I think that change, actually, you'd see a lot of Republican support for that kind of thing. Yes, sir.
Tennessee Senator Bob Corker speaking with me earlier.